All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the Republican primaries. Of course, in the lead up to the 24 election, you only have one person who is announced. That's Donald Trump. He's the technical incumbent. He's got about 50 points of support in party in all of the polls. His aggregate has straddled that line literally for months. He is the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. A lot of them don't like this. Kevin McCarthy, with his FTX disbursement a la Hawthorne, actually, we'll be talking about that in a live stream today. He isn't happy maybe about that. Mitch McConnell is probably not happy about it. He fucking hates Trump. Ultimately, though, there's only one person in the field that has been polled for it all that has a double-digit pulse, so at the very least could mount a run in theory and not get totally humiliated, and that's Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, I do not believe, is actually feuding with Trump. I think that that's bluster, and that he is unlikely to actually get in. They might try to bribe him and say, look, whether you win or not, we need a messy primary to weaken Trump, otherwise he's going to be president again. McCarthy and others will talk to him in the shadows. We'll give you like $10 million from this slush fund just to get started. We'll give you $10 million after the election's over when you probably lose anyway. Don't worry, make a book, and we'll get our Chinese partners to buy millions of copies of that book. They'll sit in warehouses till they rot, so nobody will read your autobiography, How I Crippled Trump or whatever. That'd be the title. But you have to help us stop him. They will probably try to do that. And keep in mind, there are other Republicans with presidential ambitions. We see a couple of them jostling around right now. Pence is a long shot. It's funny because Mike Pence has really straddled the line. I don't like him. He doesn't have any principles. But arguably, he's like the least malevolent for some reason of the anti-Trump pack. And probably the least likely to jump in. Pompeo's probably in. He'll get his 2 points and his speaking engagements and his lavish taxpayer-funded dinners and sell a book. That's his goal. He knows he can't win. There are two people, though, that seem to harbor actual ambitions. Christie and Nikkihaley. Now, these people are off the chain if they think that they can actually proceed to win a single delegate in a primary battle against Donald Trump, especially if DeSantis were to get in. They'd probably just endorse DeSantis or something like that just to throw some more mud on Trump's face. It's funny because Christie was at one point a Trump ally, but then he got humiliated by Trump. He wanted to have a more forefront role in the administration, and Trump said, well, thanks for the endorsement, but I'm not catering favors to you. Nobody likes you. Why the fuck would I bother? He was utterly humiliated. He was effectively told, after showing up to endorse Trump and sitting there looking stoic for a couple of speeches, he was told to get back on a plane and go back home to New Jersey. Nikkihaley is a war pig and a neocon Inc. the sort of candidate Ben Shapiro would probably support. Neither of these individuals have a political pulse, yet they are constantly teasing running. Link in the description archived, of course. That's for Haley. Christie has effectively said the same thing. Between the two of them, they would be likely to scrape up 3 or 4 points of overall support. Here's my suggestion. If you have any wisdom whatsoever, you will simply go away. You are likely to see an incoming Trump presidency, and it would be unfortunate if you were on the wrong side of the administration when potentially you can still get a cabinet pickup or some shit like that. It makes no sense to be a never-Trumper at this point. MAGA is the core of the Republican Party. Again, you don't like that. Christie is from New Jersey. He's sort of the company man, sort of political machine guy. Remember, during the government lockdowns when all the beaches in New Jersey were closed, taxpayer-funded beach, and Christie's there with his entire family. And there are pictures from up above. He looks like a beached whale rolling around in the surf with his little kids and shit like that. Totally humiliating the taxpayers of New Jersey. He got shit canned. Did he even he barely broke the double digits on a re-election bid, if I remember correctly, at one point. And then lost soundly. He's a loser. Nikkihaley has done little other than warmonger for her entire political career. Also a loser, and here's the problem. 20 years ago, they might have been conceived of as viable candidates. The Republican Party was vastly different back in the 90s or the 2000s. It's 2022 right now. We're now half a decade into the MAGA wave within the Republican Party. And try as they might, all the Kevin McCarthys and Mitch McConnells of the world have not been able to force all the MAGA candidates out of their positions. Congress still contains Marjorie Taylor Greene. People who endorsed Trump early and often, like Rand Paul, are still there. They win re-election in landslides in some cases. His was one of them, although it was entirely predictable. Didn't need to make a prediction for that particular Senate race in Kentucky, by the way. What did his opponent come in at? Like 18 points behind him or something? Yeah, really close race, and he was constantly talking about knocking Rand Paul out, and I was chuckling the entire time. You didn't need a prediction. You needed more of a prediction for a DeSantis v. Christ than for that, although I think in the end the margin was similar. The fact is this: the GOP is now war-averse, war-weary, you could say, after decades of proxy conflict, and actually holding to some core conservative values. This is something the GOP E-sorts don't do. Nikkihaley is not a conservative, and I say this as a non-conservative myself. Outsider looking in at her policies, at her statements, what's conservative about them? It sounds, I mean, you could run a Democrat on the same platform at this point because they become the war party. She should switch parties, if anything, and primary Joe Biden. Christie is an older school Republican from that same sort of Bush neocon period. He's peddling the same things that led to Jeb Bush's massive demise. You'll remember that from the 2016 election. It wasn't just because it was dynastic, it's because he was a loser. That's why people shafted Ted Cruz too, who's not principled on the MAGA stance, although he does wield some significant power at this point in the Senate. Now, Christie should either announce and basically tell the American people, look, I just want my name in the news because, I'm allowed to use social media and Trump isn't, other than Twitter, which he at the moment is not using. Buy my fucking book. Here's my book, Why I'm Running, and it's 100,000 pages of Trump, Orange Man bad, basically. Nikkihaley is effectively doing the same thing. Do you really believe in a million years that Christie believes that he can win a primary against Donald Trump? God, if Trump had stood down and said, no, I'm not running, even with all the sharks coming in to feast on the bloated corpse of the GOP at that point, absent the MAGA movement entirely probably, Christie still would be unlikely to crack into the double-digit range. He's simply not viable. He doesn't look the part. He screwed up his political career. He's had several major scandals that plague him, including the beach lockdown situation. I mean, real scandals like, hey, the public has photographic evidence of you being a vast hypocrite. You're exactly like Gavin Newsom ignoring mask mandates to go to the French Laundry to drink his $50 champagne glasses and shit like that. If you look like the rich bitch wine and dine penthouse GOP club sort of thing, it's not going to go over well. And if you look like the corporate war hawk like Nikkihaley, I don't think that maybe it goes over a little bit better than Christie, but what? I got 3 points in the primaries instead of 2. I'm a winner. Just announce to people that you're running in order to make money and embezzle and cater deals and make a book or something. Or that Kevin McCarthy has privately approached you and said, please run, we want a messy primary system. We want to try to bully the states into not simply allocating their delegates to Trump by a simple vote, because in most cases they can do that, in some cases they will. Please help us cripple him so that the Democrats win the White House. Look, Chuck Schumer just spoke with us. He said he'd throw a dozen House races our way as long as we knock off the MAGA people that are running, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, who will be reelected apparently. We've got to get rid of these people, but we're allowed to have a conservative Senate and House as long as they're not really principled conservatives. And they'll nominate, fucking Pol Pot as their candidate, and somehow magically they still win at the end of the day. It'll be because of the Republican Party's own internal corruption. That's about all. Peace out.